Okay, so I think we can start it now, Shreyansh bhai, without delaying any further. So, welcome everyone. Of the SSGSA webinar series on GRE preparation. And today we have Shreyansh Gaur bhai. He is an alumnus of Aligarh Muslim University. He had his bachelor's in mechanical engineering from AMU, and then he went on to complete his master's from Clemson University in automotive engineering. He did an internship with Bosch USA, and he has also been working full time with Cummins as an electronics hardware design engineer. So he will be today covering the verbal section of GRE, and after that I'll be covering the AWS section of GRE. So I would like Shreyansh bhai to take over and interact with our scholars about the verbal section.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the introduction, Kashif. So I'm assuming that everyone here has at least heard about GRE since you're calling in, and you know the basic structure of the test itself. But I think since I'm starting, I'll kind of give you a brief overview of the GRE itself. So there are like total 3 types of sections. One is the verbal section that I'm going to cover now. The second is AWA, and then the third is quantitative section, which I think will be covered later on. AWA will be covered by Kashif. There are 2 sections within the verbal. So you do 2 sections of quantitative, 2 sections of verbal, 1 section of AWA, and then you do a section of experimental. So the experimental section is basically not scored, but it can be anyone of quantitative, between anyone. It can be either quantitative or it can be verbal. So just focusing on the verbal reasoning section for now, it's basically designed to like test your ability to analyze the English language in various ways. So the section is itself, it's scored from a scale of 130 to 170, and it's scored in 1-point increments. Like I said, there are 2 sections, and I think later on I'll cover like these sections are marked where they are like the GRE kind of adapts to your performance. So the first section, if you perform really well, the second section would be harder than the first one. Now coming down to the type of questions or the type of sections or like the skills that they want you to present or test on, like I've listed them out here. These are the major type of questions that are asked in the verbal reasoning section. So the first one is reading comprehension. It tests your ability to understand a passage or a paragraph. Like it allows you to demonstrate your ability to analyze and draw conclusions from a discourse, like reason from incomplete data, understanding multiple levels within, like multiple levels of meaning within the passage structure, and also like literal and figurative meanings of the author. Like like there's usually an author like whose excerpt they kind of paste in the test, and like you're asked to understand what he's trying to imply, right? So this is one of the harder sections, but it's also not as ambiguous as other sections like sentence sequence or text completion. So like if you pay attention and you read your comprehension passage carefully, you can excel through these sections. The next type of questions are text completion questions. They test your ability to re-evaluate passages. So what they will do is like they'll omit key information from a sentence, and then you'll read the entire passage, and then you'll have options. And I actually have sample questions at the end of my slides, which will go through text completion and sentence equivalence. So what they do is like they'll take out key information, leave a blank, and then ask you from the options to fill in those blanks. So what it does is like you read the paragraph, you try to gain the general meaning, and then you, based on the options, you try to put, like you can do like a hidden trial, or it's just a general gut feeling, like, oh, this sounds right, this doesn't sound right, this sounds better, so maybe this is the answer. So that's the kind of approach you can take for text completion. So sentence equivalence, like this is by far, I think, the best way for them to test your vocabulary. Like this is strictly vocabulary based. So they'll have again blanks, like a single blank, and they'll have multiple words that can go into that sentence or paragraph and still give the same holistic meaning to the paragraph. So you have to select those words, right? So this is where your vocabulary comes into question, and that's why I've written a fourth section, which is actually not a section, but for the verbal reasoning, vocabulary itself is a very important skill. So like you need to improve your vocabulary, and it's not that hard to improve your vocabulary. Like I'll go through some tips and tricks in the next slide, but all these three sections, I mean, they're at the end, they're testing your analysis skills, they're testing how you read and how you process those ideas, but they're also testing how well you know the English language. So that's why vocabulary plays a key role. So Kashif, do you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Does anyone have a question? I hear number.
I think it's a background noise. We can continue.
Okay. All right. I'll ignore that. So I found some, like, while I was preparing, I went through multiple resources, and I've, like, I don't know if Kashif are planning on sharing this presentation, but if you do, there are links in there that kind of go through the verbal section. I myself use Magoosh as my like my primary source of learning. You can like group in with like 4 or 5 people, buy a package, or you can get free material on the Magoosh blog, and you like get some background and basic information about how the GRE itself is scored and how you can perform well. One of the other resources for me was ETS itself, the organization that conducts the test. The first thing I did when I started preparing for the GRE was buy the official guide to GRE by ETS. They have mock tests. They also have a CD that they give along with that. So you kind of prepare using their official standard, and then you move on to other resources. And then there are plethora of sources like Manhattan Review, and then I think there are the 2 or 3 more big names that I don't remember the names, but like these are the 3 main that I used for my preparation. For the tips, basically, whenever you're preparing for an exam, this goes for any exam in general. Honestly, GRE would probably be one of the easiest exams that you took in terms of content. The only hard part is like it's not very traditional in the sense of what it's trying to test. So the best way to prepare for it is to like familiarize yourself with the type of questions that they're asking, right? So for me, I think the best way to do that is just practice. So just find material, find questions, and just keep going through those questions.
Can I please request someone who has not muted their mic to please mute it?
Yeah.
I think we're good now.
Okay. So like I said, like you have to practice to familiarize yourself, right? So the best way to prepare is to like keep practicing the types of questions, because once you're at the test center and you see the question, and if you recognize the type of question, it's easy for you to comprehend what's trying to happen. So like what happens, because if you give a mock test in the beginning, you can see that GRE is very easy, and a lot of people just like give themselves a week to prepare for it, and then they go in and they see new types of questions. So your brain kind of deals with this newness, and like it's not prepared to actually answer the question. It's like dealing with all these different sorts of questions. So like to avoid that, what you do is you like go through as many questions as you can as time permits, and just familiarize yourself. So I'm saying that again and again because it's important. Like another way to like prepare really well, and I think which is really important, is giving mock tests. So like mock tests just try to simulate the environment in which you'll be giving the test. So getting used to like sit at a spot, and this goes for any section. This is not limited to the verbal reasoning section, but since this is one of the more difficult sections, which I see a lot of us, like Indians in general, struggle with this. So the best way is like just make sure that when you're sitting there, the only thing that you the only thing that's on your mind is like solving the question. You're not uncomfortable about sitting continuously for 3 hours watching a screen. So give mock tests, like give multiple mock tests, and just try like what I go in my next screen is like we usually are not very used to giving tests on computers. So that's the other thing. Like when you're giving mock tests, try and give that on a computer screen, because I found that myself that I was able to read better when the text was printed in front of me instead of reading it off of the screen. I mean, nowadays people on their phones every second of the day. It's different, but for me I had to like get myself up to where I can comfortably read off the screen, analyze the text, process it, and then answer the question. So like that's also a very important part. For improving vocabulary, a very tried and tested method is getting flashcards. You can find these flashcards on multiple, so they're like apps that you can download. Maboosh has an app. I think ETS itself has an app. Manhattan Review, I think, has an app for flashcards. So you can download these apps. You're just like memorizing these words. But the way to retain these words is to use these words in your everyday use. So try, and it becomes awkward. It's not very cool if you're trying to bring in words like sanguine or other erudite. Words like these don't really fit in well, but like if you keep using them, I mean, I'm almost forgot 90% of the words within a year after I gave the GRE because I stopped using them. But while I was giving it, I retained most of the words I learned because I tried to use them. People will make fun, but it's easier for you to remember. And I think that's in general, that's the best way to learn any new language and like to master any language skills. The next is like try and read like things that you love reading about. So like if you love fiction, if you love comedy, read those things and read with authors that have a good grasp of the English language, and then they use difficult vocabulary. Don't read Chetan Bhagat. He's a good writer. He has very interesting stories, but I don't think he's doing any. He's not improving your English anyway. So just try and read more types of books that you like, and you can Google these books. Like for me, it was John Quick's Road, Cash Way too. They had like really good like the general language uses that I like sit with a dictionary and read through it, and it helped me improve my vocabulary. You can also watch TV shows in general, because there's also so you're also like while you're preparing for GRE, you also have TOEFL in your mind, so you also want to improve your listening skills and also help your speaking skills. So just getting more in tune with the English language before you give the GRE, it's important. So like just give your ways that you're not bored. I'm not telling you to like read editorials from the Hindu or read editorials from the Times of India, because they can be boring. I mean, if you are interested in politics, for sure. I mean, it's interesting, but again, like just try and find things that like are interesting for you. So there's not a cookie cutter solution for everyone. Just try to find what works best for you, and do that. I think I added the note at the end just so that I remember that you will get sections more like that are difficult than before if you perform well. So like don't get disheartened if you get some questions wrong, because I think if you performed well in the first section, and I'm going a bit off topic from what I was discussing before, but like don't get disheartened if you get some questions wrong, because your section might be difficult than others, and GRE kind of curves the grading based on how difficult your section was. So that's what I was trying to go at, and I think next I have some sample questions. But before I go, I wanted to like open the floor for questions for just for this section. So if anyone has any questions about verbal reasoning in general, they can ask them now, or they can ask at the end of the presentation. So anyone, any questions?
If anyone has any questions, they can simply unmute their mic before speaking so we can hear them.
Okay, so I think I'm going through the text. So which books Ikra has asked. So for books, I will say in general, the first book that you should buy is the Official Guide to GRE by ETS. And I have other lists, and I think I can send out a list of material that I have to the same email chain that went. But I use the 3 resources that I told you as my they were basically my source for all things related to GRE. So the only hard copy that I had was from Magoosh. Sorry, it was from GRE-ETS, and then everything online was from Magoosh. So if you want to buy a book or if you want to invest, I would say invest in the Official Guide to GRE by ETS, because they are the people who organize the test and they'll have the most clear information about the test. So
आप सर लेने दो, थोड़ा सा रह गया.
Is there a question or आपका सवाल समझ में नहीं आया मुझे, अगर आपने सवाल पूछा तो.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Actually, hello. I have one question actually.
Yes.
Actually, whenever I try to solve RC section, then most of the questions got wrong.
In verbal?
Yeah, RC, reading comprehension.
Reading comprehension questions were wrong.
Yes, sir.
You were saying yes, that you are asking that how to improve your reading comprehension skills?
Yeah. Reading comprehension. Yeah.
How to perform better in reading comprehension, right? That's what you're trying to ask.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So like with anything else, it's normal because reading comprehension it's not very straightforward, right? Because it can be very ambiguous. हमेशा समझ में नहीं आता कि वो क्या पूछना चाह रहा है और क्या लिखा हुआ है. तो बेस्ट तरीका ये होता है कि आप जैसे मगूश का आप देखेंगे तो वो लोग क्या करते हैं, रीडिंग कॉम्प्रिहेंशन का पैसेज होता है और आप देते हैं, जवाब देते हैं, लेकिन वो लोग फिर एक्सप्लेन भी करते हैं कि अगर ये आंसर सही है तो क्यों सही है, गलत है तो क्यों गलत है. और इस तरीके से अगर आप और मटेरियल भी खरीदेंगे तो उसमें इस तरीके से समझाया होता है कि कुछ सही है तो क्यों सही है, गलत है तो क्यों गलत है. तो जब आप मॉक टेस्ट दे रहे हैं या फिर ऐसे प्रैक्टिस सवाल कर रहे हैं, so then it's important that you focus on why the option that was selected is right, because it's not very easy to explain, but it's very easy to instinct, you can make it's very instinctive, right? Because you read because what they're trying to gauge is how you can analyze information which is incomplete, because it won't be incomplete. So it's like what conclusions you draw based on whatever you have in front of you. So what I struggled with when I was doing reading comprehension was that I could argue about every single option if I wanted to. Every single option would fit. But what you have to do is you have to see what is the easiest and the most straightforward answer to what has been asked. जो reading comprehension का passage है उसके अंदर जो आपको option दिए हैं उसमें सबसे easily fit कौन सा होगा, मुझे सबसे कम आर्ग्यूमेंट किसके लिए करना पड़ेगा, मतलब जो जिसके लिए आपको घुमा फिरा के बातें ना बनानी पड़े. तो अगर आप अपने आप से आर्ग्यूमेंट करेंगे अच्छा ये यहाँ जाएगा क्या, ये इधर जाएगा क्या, ये फिट होता है क्या क्वेश्चन, तो आप इस तरीके से अपने आप को एक ऑप्शन उठा के डाल के देख सकते हैं कि क्या यही पूछ रहा है वो, क्या यही है. तो आप एक तरीके से हिट एंड ट्राई ना बोल के आप उसको हर आंसर का मेरिट देख सकते हैं अगर आप डायरेक्टली नहीं आ पा रहे हैं. कुछ क्वेश्चंस इजी होंगे रीडिंग कॉम्प्रिहेंशन में, तो जो मुश्किल हो उनको आप हर ऑप्शन को एनालाइज करें क्या ये फिट हो रहा है, क्योंकि कुछ ऑप्शन ऐसे होंगे जो आप बिल्कुल तरह से एलिमिनेट कर सकते हैं. कुछ ऑप्शन ऐसे होंगे जो कि आपको लगेगा कि जानबूझ के देते हैं कि कंफ्यूजन हो, तो उनमें थोड़ा सोचें, देखें ये इजीली फिट हो रहा था, उसको सिलेक्ट करें. और ये बेटर कैसे होगा, ये बेटर होगा प्रैक्टिस, कि आप थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा तरह के ज़्यादा क्वेश्चन करें, तो आपका दिमाग एक तरीके से एक मेंटल मॉडल बना लेता है कि अच्छा हाँ अगर ये चीज़ें पूछी जा रही है तो यही आंसर होगा.
One more
I think you can hear some background noise. Can the person please mute their mic?
Somebody speaking. Hello.
No, there's a lot of background noise.
Hello. Hello.
Yep.
Hello, sir. एक कॉल डाउट है एक्चुअली. हेलो.
हाँ बोलिए, आपकी आवाज आ रही है.
Can you please mute your mic?
Sir, actually, whenever I face ना long passage, जब long passage आता है ना तो उसमें time consuming मेरा बहुत ज़्यादा होता है. So how to minimize it?
हाँ तो टाइम कंज्यूमिंग आपके स्टार्टिंग का मुझे समझ भी नहीं, आपने क्या पूछा.
जो लॉन्ग पैसेज होता है ना, आज में जो लॉन्ग पैसेज आ गया 25 लाइन 30 लाइन, तो उसको समझने में, अंडरस्टैंड करने में, रीडिंग करने में बहुत थोड़ा टाइम लगता है मुझे.
वो टाइम लगता है क्योंकि आप यूज टू नहीं है उसको पढ़ने के, ठीक है. और इसलिए क्योंकि हमारी मतलब हम लोग लाइक इंग्लिश इज अ सेकंड लैंग्वेज फॉर ऑल ऑफ अस, ठीक है. अगर वही पैसेज अगर आपको हिंदी या उर्दू में दिया होता तो आप उसको बहुत आसानी से समझ सकते हैं, ठीक है. उसका रीजन क्या है कि आपकी हिंदी और उर्दू में पकड़ अच्छी है और आपने उसको ज्यादा पढ़ा है उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, मतलब चीजें समझने के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में. तो उसको अगर आपको टाइम को कम करना है, इसलिए मैं कह रहा हूँ कि आप किताबें पढ़ें, मतलब ऐसी किताबें पढ़ें जो आपको अच्छी लगती हैं. जैसे मेरी 2 किताबें थी जो मैंने अभी चैट विंडो में डाली हैं. ये दोनों काफी पुरानी किताबें हैं. एक 1960 में आई थी, एक 1890 में आई थी, लेकिन मतलब 1930 का भी उसमें आई थी. बट ये काफी अच्छी किताबें थी मुझे, मतलब एक तरीके से इंग्लिश जो है उसको अपने सिरे से इम्प्रूव करने के लिए. तो आपको मतलब आप गूगल भी करेंगे ना बेस्ट नॉवेल्स टू रीड फॉर GRE, तो आपको बहुत सारी लिस्ट मिलेंगे. और कोई भी किताब ऐसी नहीं कि यही पढ़नी चाहिए. जो आपको इंटरेस्टिंग लगे वो किताब, आजकल तो आप ऑनलाइन भी बिना खरीदे डाउनलोड कर सकते हैं किताबों को. तो मतलब कोशिश करें वैसी किताबें पढ़ने की जो आपको इंटरेस्टिंग लगे. और अगर आप बिना ये दिमाग में रख के पढ़ेंगे कि मैं किसी पेपर के लिए पढ़ रहा हूँ, तो आप इंटरेस्टेड होंगे उसमें और आपका दिमाग अपने आप ट्रेंड होगा कि वो कैसे इन्फॉर्मेशन निकाल रहा है. क्योंकि आप जब भी कुछ पढ़ते हैं, जब भी आप कोई आर्टिकल पढ़ते हैं, जब भी आप फेसबुक पे भी कोई पोस्ट पढ़ते हैं, तभी आप एक तरीके से कॉम्प्रिहेंड कर रहे होते हैं ना कि क्या लिखा हुआ है. लेकिन अगर आप थोड़ा सा अलग फील्ड में जाएंगे, जैसे उनके क्या होते हैं ज्यादातर क्वेश्चन जो होते हैं, जो पैराग्राफ्स होते हैं, सोशल इश्यूज बेस्ड होते हैं या फिर बिजनेस कॉर्पोरेट वर्ल्ड के ऐसे सेक्शन उठा के डाल देते हैं. तो उसमें बस ये होता है कि आप थोड़ा उस तरह का पढ़ें तो आपको नया ना लगे कि ये क्या है. मतलब ऑब्वियसली जब वो कुछ पूछेंगे तो वो कुछ नया ही होगा. आप हर चीज तो नहीं पढ़ सकते, लेकिन उस तरह का आप पढ़ सकते हैं जिससे कि आपको समझ में जल्दी आए, आप जल्दी पकड़ पाएंगे वो क्या कहना चाह रहा है. तो अगेन मतलब मैं वही उस पर आ रहा हूँ कि आप पढ़ें, प्रैक्टिस करें, मतलब अपने आप को टाइम दें, अपने आप को GRE से पहले इतना टाइम दें कि आप तैयारी कर सकें इन सब चीजों की. इसलिए मतलब लगता वर्बल जैसे क्वांटिटेटिव है, क्वांटिटेटिव में मुझे पता है कि हम में से जितने लोग अभी हैं कॉल पे सब बहुत अच्छा स्कोर कर लेंगे क्योंकि हमने मैथमेटिक्स में हमसे बहुत अच्छी पकड़ है. वर्बल में यही प्रॉब्लम होती है कि हम खुद बिलीव नहीं करते कि हमारी पकड़ है, तो हम मतलब फिर उस पर इतना काम भी नहीं करते. तो इसलिए मैंने जब तैयारी करी थी तो मैंने क्वांटिटेटिव पे शायद 2 या 3 हफ्ते ही करा था और वर्बल पे मैंने करीब 2.5 महीना लगाया था. फिर भी मेरा वर्बल का स्कोर मेरे क्वांटिटेटिव के स्कोर से कम था, लेकिन फिर भी इतना आता था कि ठीक ठाक. तो बस वही है कि अपने आप को टाइम दिया.
We can move forward with the remaining slides because we have a time constraint.
तो अभी मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि जैसे क्वेश्चन ये सब लोग उसमें भी कर सकते हैं, तो सैम्पल क्वेश्चन मुझे लगता नहीं कवर करने की जरूरत है. ये आप जब स्लाइड भेजेंगे तो लोगों को अपने आप समझ आएगा, और अगर क्वेश्चन हो तो वो ईमेल कर सकते हैं उसका. तो अगर आप चाहें तो ये सैम्पल क्वेश्चन स्किप कर दें, ठीक है. हेलो.
Myself Shreyansh Ahmad. I joined this call from Aligarh Muslim University, and currently I'm doing my master's in Spanish from the Department of Foreign Languages. And this year I applied for the SSGSA scholarship, and I have a question that I have been wanting to ask since quite a long time. But before that, I would like to know who am I speaking to, sir?
So this is Shreyansh Gaur. I graduated from Aligarh Muslim University in 2015.
Okay.
I did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. Then I did my master's in automotive engineering from Clemson. And now I'm working at Cummins as an electronic controls engineer. On the other side is Kashif. He also graduated a year after me from AMU. I think he did his master's from Purdue, and he's working for Amazon now.
And you guys are both from the technical field, right?
Yes.
So my question is, sir, that I applied for the SSGSA scholarship, but somehow or other I didn't get selected for that. And after the results came out, I saw that the science students are being given more preference by the scholarship, and the humanities and social sciences students are just not. Yeah.
Sharik, can I please request you to keep this question for a different session or for a different time, because this session we have organized only for GRE-Verbal and the AWA preparation for the scholars that are on the call. So we will kindly request you to write us an email about the issue that you might had with us, so we can deal it on a separate occasion. So we can continue with our presentation.
Sir. All right. I didn't know that this session was specifically for the GRE holders.
Okay, so you can be on the call and enjoy the session while we try to interact with you all people on GRE preparation.
All right, sir.
So Shreyansh bhai, you can continue with the presentation, with the sample questions.
Okay, so I'll go ahead with the sample questions. So the first question is basically for text completions. So what you have to do is, like, you read the whole passage. You can read the whole passage in your own time. I'm not going to go through the passage because I think Kashif needs to go through a section too. But what they're trying to do is just to give you an idea of what the questions will be like. So blank one, they have 3 options, right? So what you do is you start reading. So you read the first line and you see, okay, it is refreshing to read a book about a planet by an author who does not allow facts to be dashed by politics. This is very easy to do if you know the meanings of all the 9 words or all the 9 phrases, right? You might know, you might not know exactly what it means, but you might have an idea of what it means. So you can, if you don't get it directly, you can just place them in the blank and just read the sentence all over again. So what I would have done was, like, I would have put the first section in, first blank in, and I would have done overshadowed by politics, and that sounded right. Invalidated by politics, that doesn't sound right, because if you read the whole section, it goes about how the writer tries to emphasize basically how our planet is being affected by the political discourse that's going on. But he still keeps a hold of his his mastery of the planetary evolution sciences, right? So you can read the whole paragraph and you'll get a general idea of what idea they're trying to give, and then you can place the blanks and see which one fits better. So that's the kind of approach you want to do. So you want to read each section, each sentence till each blank first, see what fits, but also you want to read the whole thing first and see what is the general idea, because I think if you want to look at the blank 1, 2, or 3, there are clues hidden in the whole paragraph that will help you fill in those blanks. So I think that's what I was trying to tell with this sample question. You want to go to the next one? Yeah, the second sample is basically sentence equivalence. So here what you have to do is, you have 2 sentences, or you have a sentence, and there are 2 words that have similar meaning that can go in, and they won't change the meaning of the entire sentence. They won't change the intent of what the sentence is trying to say. So the first question is, although it does contain some pioneering ideas, one would hardly characterize the work as. So just try to analyze what it's saying before the blank. So although it does contain some pioneering ideas, it means that pioneering ideas means that it's very new, right? Pioneering means you're doing something new, you're doing something innovative. But one would hardly characterize the work as. So if they're saying pioneering, but they're also saying, okay, what can make people like think about new things, but it's not like its work is not usually something that you call innovative. So innovative goes there. Or the second option would be original, because they both have the same meaning. So like eccentric does not mean eccentric means someone like when I read eccentric, Tony Stark comes into my mind. Someone is very random. So eccentric doesn't go there. Orthodox doesn't go there. Trifling is like a problem. So conventional doesn't go there, right? So those kind of like you have to think about those kind of things. The second question similarly. So the second question is about the same thing. So like I was just trying to give you some sample questions of how it goes, and I think now of how the sentence equivalence and text completion questions can be tackled. So I think I've given that idea in general, and I would hand it over to Kashif to complete his section.
Can Anonymous please mute their mic? I think we have three people who have not muted their mics. Satyendra, Anonymous, and someone from this number 864-908-970. Is it you, Shreyansh bhai?
Yeah, that's me. At that time talking. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for muting the mics. We have here our reasoning section covered. Now we jump to the AWS section of GRE. I am Kashif. I completed my master's from Purdue University, and right now I'm working as a simulation data scientist for Amazon in Seattle, Washington. And I'm one of the operational team members in SSGSA. And in today's GRE preparation webinar, I'll be covering the AWS section. First of all, we would like to let you know what AWS is actually all about. So GRE AWS section is all about expressing yourself in a very logical fashion. So it's all about logic and building and writing a comprehension that makes sense in light of the question and in light of the information provided by GRE. So if we talk about it in a broad sense, basically we have two different kinds of essays that GRE is asking us to write, and for both of them we get 30 minutes of time to make our response, and that 30 minutes includes reading the question, understanding it, and typing your response. And the kind of word editor that you find there in order to type your essay is very different. It's very basic one. It only has the options of typing and copying and pasting. There is no word editor for spelling and grammar check. So you'll have to make sure that you know what you're facing. And I would highly recommend to watch some GRE AWA videos, responses, so you know what kind of typing features you might encounter there, so you don't surprise yourself on the test day. Coming back to the introduction part, the test essays are scored from 0 to 6. Both of them are scored from a scale of 0 to 6. 6 is obviously the best one, and 0 is the least bare minimum that you can get. So the incrementation in the test scores in the AWS section happens with a least count of 0.5. So you can either get a 0 and then 0.5 and then 1, 1.5 or 2, and in the same manner all the way up till 6. So GRE has certain benchmark, and it has its own set of readers who are the professors and elite literates from different parts of the world who are being hired and are exceptionally trained by GRE ETS in order to rate your essays successfully. So I'll give a brief summary of how GRE tries to test you and how it grades you. So first we talk about the objective of these essays and why GRE wants you to test you on these essays. So the reason why ETS wants you to test on these essays is because this is something that a grad school would require from you. So when you enter a grad school in the United States, what the professors would expect from you would be a very good skill of writing, because at the end of your research or thesis, they would ask you to write some paper, right? Or even when you are attending some seminar or writing conference paper, they would like it to be very top-notch. So it is a little bit different from the verbal section, because in the AWS section, they are not looking for, a group of very elite or very difficult words which you find on the GRE vocab. What they're basically looking here is something that you type makes logical sense. So whenever you write a research paper, you try to be cynical of different facts, and you try to see logic in everything, and you try to be very coherent as possible. So this is something that grad school demands, and this is why GRE is here to test for you. So how does the grading happens in GRE for these tests? So as I said, there is a human grader who will test your essays and give you scores from 0 to 6. The very interesting thing is in less than 30 seconds, like 25 or 30 seconds, there is one person who is sitting and reading your essay and rating you. So because they have tons of thousands of people writing GRE every day, so during the test season, so they have to go through a pile of essays, so they hardly take more than 30 seconds to rate you. So what GRE does is it has a software called eRater, which will rate your essays on a 0 to 6 scale, and on a separate scale there will be a human grader who is a qualified GRE tester. He will read your essay and he or she will also grade it. So in case if eRater software does not match with the score of the human grader, if it differs by more than 1 point, then GRE thinks that that essay needs to be rated once again by a human being. So they will hand it over to another human who will rate it, and finally the score given by the second human grader would be the final score that you receive. Does anyone have any question about how GRE rates your essays? Or all right, so I'll move to the next section. So as I told, we have two different kinds of essays in this section. The first one is the issue type essay, and then the second one is the argument type essay. So as clear from the word itself, issue type essays are asking you to put your points on a particular issue. So that issue could be from the culture of any country, from the culture of any particular section of the society. So for example, they can ask you to put your opinion on a sentence they write about Mozambique culture in Africa. Other than that, they can also ask you to put your points for issues related with politics or education. So overall, they're not trying to, get a right answer from you. So if they ask you something about Donald Trump, they're not expecting you to write your own opinion on it, or which you think is always right. What they're trying to do is they're trying to test on you on certain things that I'll try to explain you in these slides. So one very important thing here to note is that issue statement is always followed by one of the 5 different kinds of instructions on your writing. And this is something that many students miss when they are tackling the issue type essays. So here is a breakdown of 6 marks for this issue type essay. As you can see, the first thing that GRE would look for would be, does your essay have a clarity of words? If your essay does not have a clarity of words, then you're surely trying to jumble up the words, which ETS graders do not like. So they would want you to make a coherent paragraph full of words which combinedly make sense. So if you say something using certain set of words in one sentence, they would want you to reflect that in subsequent sentences that you type. Another thing that I would like to add here about the words is that you should always try to make 500 to 600 of words, which account for almost 150 or 130 lines of essays. And you should try to put a good GRE vocabulary, why not use the memories? Why not use the words that you have already memorized by putting so much effort? So I'm not trying to convey here that you should force yourself to use those words, but always try to avoid using the common words and try to use the GRE vocabulary words wherever you wherever you find an occasion. And then always try to split your essays in 4 to 5 paragraphs. At least 3 would be best, and every time you make a new paragraph, you should try to make a overview picture of what you're going to put that in the paragraph. You should not just divide your essays in random paragraphs. So every paragraph carries an idea. So for example, the first paragraph that you put might be there to explain the situation, the issue. The second paragraph that you might type would be about your take on that issue. And the third paragraph that you might type would be about how that particular issue that you have read and how that particular issue topic might have a different stake if you decided to agree instead of disagreeing, or vice versa. So that's where the second thing comes up, which is the follows the instruction. So after you have supported your idea on the issue with clarity of words and you have used a very convincing idea to support your evidences or logic. The third thing would be if you follow the instruction written on the question. So if you go to the official ETS website and you look at the AWA section information on their website, you would find that each task is accompanied by one of the following sets of instructions. You can very clearly read on the website itself. I'll send the link for the website, the particular page on that section, which I'm talking about right now, so you can see for yourself where students. So this is where the trick comes in. So students think that they have written a very good essay and they had put a lot of clarity on words, and their ideas was also convincing, and they try to so here in the issue type or in the argument type, in the issue type essay, you have the freedom of putting in the examples and evidences from your own life or from somewhere that you have read, because you have this freedom in the issue type essay. In the argument type essay, which I will be covering in the next slide, things are different. In the argument type, you are given a particular situation, a very specific situation, which is very, very specific, and you are trying to deduce the logic and give a coherent response on that situation, which is kind of very similar to what its heading is, which is argument. In the issue type, a very generic statement appears in front of you, and in order to tackle that statement, they want you to follow a certain set of instructions, which students often forget. So they take care of the clarity, they take care of the convincing, they take care of a good vocabulary and grammar, and still they end up getting only 4.0. And the reason behind it is that they are not following instructions. So I'll try to make it clear what I really mean by following the instructions. So so let's come back to the example that I have here. The best way to teach is to praise positive actions and ignore negative ones. So this is one of the samples taken from the GRE ETS guide itself. It is one of the issue type essays example. So they will put this statement in front of you, and now they'll ask you to make a response on it, which follows these instructions. So I'll give you a sample instruction. Okay, so I'm going to read it from the GRE ETS website itself. So it's like, write a response in which you discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree with the statement and explain your reasoning for the position you take. So this is like a common sentence in all the question types that you will find. The next statement that you will find is something that demarcates one instruction from the other. So I'll give you the example. So in developing and supporting your position, you should consider ways in which the statement might or might not hold true. And in another example, in developing and supporting your position, describe specific circumstances. Okay, so you can very easily see the differences between the two. In the second question type, it asks you to describe specific circumstances, while on the first one, it did not ask for you to write specific circumstances. So it's very crucial to read the instruction and make your response in accordance with that. Next is the argument type essay. So here also, like very similar to the issue type, the only difference would be you will be presented with a situation. So for example, you might have a situation where a particular scientist went onto an island and he did a study on the population of the island, and he found out that the children on that island were able to recognize their parents. And then there was another research group which went on to that island, and they interviewed the children, and they found out that the students were not, and they interviewed the children on that island, and the children and the responses of different children was recorded, and it was found out that not just the parents but the children were able to recognize older people of the island as a whole and not just their parents. So the scientists made an argument that by this argument we can, by this study I can say that parents, that the children are more, of that island, of that particular island, are more closer to their parents rather than any other part of the island, any other older section of the island. But on the second argument, which the second research group has made, is that they went on and they actually interviewed the children of those islands. So they say that it's not a good way, the way the first scientist has conducted his research. The better way is to actually go on the island and do the research on the children by actually asking them questions, by interviewing them. So you will be presented with a situation on which you will have to read and then prepare your response. So you will have to dissect the logic behind it in accordance with the instructions that follow. Once again, I'm speaking about the instructions that follow. So for example, there is one sample instruction that I've presented here in front of you, which is like write a response in which you discuss what specific evidence is needed to evaluate the argument below, and explain how the evidence would weaken or strengthen the argument. So you will have to, so what this instruction is trying to tell you is that you'll have to read the argument, you'll have to read the idea given in the paragraph very carefully, and then after that you will have to, whatever stand you take. So it's not like you are supporting the scientist or you're supporting the second group of the research scientists. It's not like taking one stand. It all depends on what kind of instruction it is asking you about. So if it's asking you about to take a stand, a particular stand, then you take a particular stand. So for example, you can take the stand of the research group, of the second scientist research group, and you start supporting them. And then what it asks you to what are the evidences which compelled you to take that stand. So you'll have to explain, you'll have to read those paragraphs, and then you'll have to jot down the important points written in those paragraphs which you think are in favor of the second research group and not in the favor of the scientist about the island research. So you'll have to do that. And then once again, the third part of the instruction says that you'll have to explain how the evidences that you have picked are weakening or strengthening the argument. So you have to do both. So you can either take the evidence, see how it's in the favor, and then at the same time, what it is asking you is there any instances where the stake that you have taken might weaken the argument? So if you can think in a very broad sense, then it's like a tree. So if you take one stand of the argument, then you go from there, and then you try to see it can be false as well, it can be true as well. So if you're taking the true path, then you'll have to explain why it could be true. And then if you take the false one, then you'll have to see how it can go false. So everything that you write should have to be supported by the evidences that you provide. So it's very important to read the instructions. Once again, a tip here would be to always be wary of the clock, the clock which is ticking in front of you. For 30 minutes, you get to make your argument. And here I put some tips on building a very compelling argument. So these are the tips I directly took from GRE Magoosh website. So you'll have to identify the aspects of the argument relevant to the task assigned. So whatever argument you make should not be very random. So for example, if we come back to our own example of the research scientist group, you should not, if you have done the similar kind of research in one lab, you should not put that research finding in this argument. You should not take things personally and put the opinions based on your own life in the argument type. You can do that in that issue type where you are open to put the evidence, where you are open to build the argument based on what you have experienced in your life. But in the argument type essay, you are only allowed to pick the data points and make the information out of it based on whatever is provided. Nothing additional to be put in the argument type essay. And then the second step would be to provide a compelling and thorough support for its main point. So it's very important to understand the main points of the argument. So for example, if there's another argument type essay example, company XYZ started to sell its stock tried to surmise why they have done so. So they came up for a particular blah blah reason why they started selling the stock. And then there's another research group who tried to reason out why they had done so, and then they came up with this reason. So they will present you two different group of people who are putting their own argument. Now it will be followed by the instruction. So once again, it's very important to read the instruction. So they have given you enough information in the paragraph itself. So for example, one main point would be that the company XYZ has sold its stock. That is one of the information. Second, the company has sold the stock because of these reasons. Third, there was this research group that tried to reason out why they have sold their stock in the year 2018. Now you try to build all those argument based on those evidences, and then you take one stance and then you start speaking on it. So it's very important for you to go through the main points. And then the third tip would be to make use of a proper grammar and sentence structure. Once again, it's something very important. If you make GRE reader testers are okay with a very minor grammatical errors, but if you make errors on pronouns or if you make errors on something very obvious, it's definitely a big no and a deal breaker. And if you are doing it, please try to work on it, because even if you have written a very good essay, but it's prone to grammatical errors which are obviously very obvious, then you're surely going to lose points on that. Here I put some points on how you can evaluate your AWA essays. So there are different techniques. So one bad thing about AWA essays is that nobody wants to really evaluate it for you for free. So there are companies in the United States that evaluate your essay for a given amount of money, but it's around $20 to $30, which is still a big amount of money for us back in India. So it's not a good way for us right now. Unfortunately, SSGSA does not provide any financial help on evaluating your AWA essays. So you are left out with these options that I'm putting in this slide. So the first one is the self-evaluation. I would say this is not one of the best ways, because you have already written that essay, so you might be biased about the essay. So you might think that I've written it perfectly and I'm going to get 5 or 6 on this, but in reality it's only worth 3.5. So how do you know what actually it is worth for, and where do you stand? Another way would be to read the sample responses from the ETS website itself. So ETS has a pool of essay topics on issue and argument. I would highly recommend to go through them, at least like 10 of them before you actually tackle the exam. Then GRE ETS guide has those sample responses. So it has responses for the essay which got 6. It has responses for the essay that got 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, even 1. So you're going to get 0 if you don't type anything. Don't worry, you're not going to get 0 unless you type nothing. So if you read the GRE level 6 essay, you'll realize how good really it is. And you'll also realize that it's not only about the grammar, it's not only about the beautiful words, the hard words that you put there, because they're not trying to check you once again. In AWA, they're not checking on how many words you have in your brain. What they're really trying to see is what goes behind when you type. Are you a logical person? Do you make a coherent argument? Do your words support themselves, or they are standing against each other? So this is what they're trying to see. So I'll recommend you to read the sample responses as well. And thirdly, I will ask you to make friends with the fellow SSGSA scholars, and then you try to review each other's responses. This is a good way, because you are not going to be biased for your response, and it will be fun to read each other's answer. This is something that I used to do with my friend. I would write my essay, like I would try AWA at least 2 or 3 times every week in my pre-preparation days, and I would ask my friend to review it for me, and I will review it for him as well. And then there is one more way of posting your essay on some popular GRE forums, where you can get your essays reviewed for free, if you're lucky enough. So what you can do is you can probably go to urch.com, which is a very famous GRE forums. You can go there and then go to the AWA section of the forum, and then you can simply type in your essays, and you can paste it with the heading of the with the kind of essay that you have written, and you can kindly request some of the users there, some active users, to kindly review it for you. And if you request it for 4 or 5 people, then you might get response from 1 or 2, and that is a good thing to do. So it's good practice, to evaluate your essay and see where you're standing. Other forums are like on the similar grounds are the GMAT Club and the Grad Cafe. So GMAT is another exam which is similar to GRE, but it's for MBA rather than Masters in Science. So you can take help of the GMAT Club forum as well, and the Grad Cafe is also there. Some of the Indian forums are also there, like the Stupid Sid, which you can go and visit. Regarding the resources, we have a very comprehensive list of resources on our SSGSA website itself. So if you go on in there and click on the resource tab, you will find these set of links which we have uploaded on there. So some of them have the drive link, where you can find and download a long list of PDF for yourself. We have this link called AWA Argument Pool, which contains the exhaustive list of the prompts for the argument essays for AWA section. So it's basically a list of topics that GRE might ask you to write on the essay. So it has this big issue pool and as well as the argument pool. So this is the official and exhaustive list. So most likely you're going to get question from one of these only. So it's very important to practice at least 10 to 15 from them. Okay, so that's how that is all I was hoping to convey to you today about the AWA section. And Shreyansh Bhai has done a very good job in talking about the vocab section. And if you guys have any questions now is the time to talk. Let's discuss it and see what you've got. So I'll request you to either unmute and type in and speak about the question you might have, or you can simply type in the chat box and we will see it from there. So Hossein has asked, what if I score 4? So Hossein, a score of 4.0 is not a bad score, first of all. So a major chunk of students end up getting either a 3.5 or a 5. So so the mean of the scores that majority of students get lies in this range. So I would say 4 is not really a bad score. And if you are an avid reader and you have been having this passion of typing essays and having this creative mindset regarding the creative writing, then it would not be difficult for you to get a 4. And 4 is really a good score, not a bad one, definitely. Tahir has asked how to structure paragraphs in a proper way. So it's very important. So first thing I would like to tell you is how many paragraphs, how many recommended number of paragraphs you should have in your essays. I would say you should have at least 3 paragraphs in your essay, and each of those paragraphs should have around 100 to 150 words, 150 to 100 words in each of those paragraphs. So the way you structure them is highly dependent on the kind of questions they are asking. So if they are asking you to support your position in issue type essay, then definitely you should dedicate one of the paragraphs, the starting paragraph, to support the position that you are taking. And then in the second, then once again, the key is to read the instruction very clearly that follows the issue generic statement. So in the first paragraph you might want to support the position you have taken, and in the second paragraph you might want to consider the ways in which the statement might or might not be true, and in the third paragraph you might explain how these considerations would shape your or strengthen your position. So the key is to read the instruction and then see how many chunks of instructions, the sub instructions are there in the big main instruction, and then try to go from there. Satyendra has asked if there is any special trick to handle the long passages in a very short period of time. And if I'm not sure if this is an RC kind of question, right? The reading comprehension, which is from the verbal section. So I think Shreyansh Bhai can take over. Shreyansh Bhai, are you on the call? Hello? Hello, Shreyansh Bhai? I think Shreyansh Bhai is not able to hear me. Anyway, I'll try to answer your question, Satyendra. So you have asked if there is any special trick to handle the long passages in a very short period of time. And yes, there is one trick. So when you are reading the comprehension, what you should try to do is you should quickly scan through it. So that is called the first phase of reading. Instead of reading it from A to Z, from first statement to the last statement with full dedication, what you should try to do is go through it in less than 10 seconds or 15 seconds and see what it is really all about. And then instead of reading it and then going back to questions, what I would recommend is give it a reading of 20 seconds or 30 seconds, jump to the questions, and then go back to the paragraph. So when you read it for the first time, you really know what kind of questions you might be asked, and then when you go back to the questions, then you would realize because you have just photo-eyed the question, the paragraph, you would definitely be able to recognize what section of which paragraph was it related to, so you can answer them. Hossein has asked, if I get integral score in issue and decimal score in argument, what happens then? What would happen here is you get one integral score in one section, and you get a decimal score in the argument. So it's not going to end up with a score of 4.25 or 4.75. That's not the way it's going to happen. So what they do is they try to grade you in such a way that the average of the two comes on the scale of 0.5 and rather than 0.25. So they would try to make those adjustments by rereading both of your responses and then making the average come in the range of with the least count of 0.5 rather than 0.75 or 0.25. So don't worry about it. They will make adjustment in accordance. Does anyone have any other question here? Okay, so I think we got one more question. So the question is, how important is the verbal section for science programs? So in general, GRE is important. The verbal section is important for the entire GRE exam itself. So it's not like just for the science programs. It's a better question would have been, how important is the quant section for the science programs, because your quantitative aptitude is something which they are looking for when they are evaluating you for science degree. So verbal section is also an important parameter, because as I told you, if your verbal section is not good, then you will not be able to make a compelling and good argument in the AWS section, which is important for the grad school. So yeah, for the overall GRE, the verbal section is important, which in terms is important for your application. So I would say verbal section is important for the science section as well. So Anonymous has asked how much time is required for the GRE preparation. As you might have heard Shreyansh by saying that he took around 2.5 months just for preparing for the verbal section. And since he was a science student, he was comfortable with the quantitative part of it. So anyway, between 3 or 4 months, I would say is a good preparation time for GRE. But again, it all depends on where you stand initially. If you only had a basic knowledge of English and you have not graduated from an English medium school, then things might be different. And if you are a very active and avid reader, the time would be even less. Now, Kanya has asked a question. She's asking if applying for a PhD program require a higher AWS score as compared to masters. Definitely, Gania, if you're applying directly for a PhD program, then AWS score matters. And if you have a score of 4 or higher on the AWA section, you are good to go for a PhD program. Once again, this is the AWS score is in no way a deal breaker for a PhD program. It's just I would say the least important part in the GRE is the AWA, and it's definitely one of the most difficult one as well, because it's very hard to know where you stand, because you cannot really find an answer because it's a subjective type question. So yes, if you are able to score 4 on your AWA or even 3.5, I think you are good to go. You should not be worried about the AWA score as much as you should worry about the overall GRE score on the scale of 370. So Anam has a question, how to just start preparation means what we should do first for GRE. So obviously the first step in preparing for GRE is making a base for the vocabulary. Let me tell you about the techniques that I used in order to build my vocabulary. So I was a resident of the Nadeem Green Hall when I was an undergrad student in AMU. I did my mechanical engineering from there. So what I used to do was I would simply buy a big poster, like a white poster, and then you know those vocabulary flashcards from Magoosh. They are really good ones. So what I did was I used to make columns and rows in that chart, in that white paper, and then I only wrote the words and not their meanings. So you simply, so if you make a 10 by 100 grid on that paper, you just made 1,000 cells in that table, and then you paste that chart on the wall behind the bed where you sleep, and you write only the words and not the meaning. So every time you enter the room, every time I used to enter the room, the first thing I would do is I would simply see one of the columns or one of the rows of the chart paper that I have prepared, and excuse me. And instead of looking at the meaning of the word, I would try to recall what actually it might mean. So when you do that forced recalling on your brain, you force your brain to recall what it actually means. And when you force something on your brain, it takes effort. So your brain is actually trying to put a lot of effort and energy on recognizing that word. So when the brain does that kind of activity, that particular meaning retains in your memory for a longer time. So I called it. So it's called forced learning technique. So you only write the word and not its meaning, and every time you see that word, you try to recall it. That's how the flashcard works. So you try to recall it by forced mechanism. So I would highly recommend doing it. Write a bunch of words on a diary or on a chart paper, and then paste it somewhere, and then every time you see, you try to force yourself to recall it. So first step would be obviously building the vocabulary. Sidra is asking a question of how important is the quantitative section for English Humanities program. So Sidra, once again, my reply would be very similar to what the previous question was. Previously someone has asked how important is the verbal section for the science student. And as I've said, both the verbal and the quantitative section are important for GRE, and GRE is in turn important for your grad application. So once again, the leverage would not be given for you for how badly you score on the quantitative section. But once again, if you score abysmally low in the quantitative section, even though if you're applying for an English Humanities program, you're going to suffer on the overall score. So I would say if you are from the English or Humanities program and you're scoring around 155 in the quant section, which is a bit easier than the verbal section, and you are not able to score more than 160 in the verbal section itself, then your overall score is not going to be more than 315, right? So I would say you try to make a balance between the two, and obviously since you're from the English Humanities, I would expect that you would have a very good command on the AWA and the verbal section. And I would suggest you to don't completely ignore the fact that quant section is also important for scoring. Because in the grad school, they expect you to be logical, both in terms of mathematics and in terms of writing. So they don't want you to be, lame on the mathematical side of it. Because even in the grad school, in English or Humanities, you might have to go through some statistical concepts which require you to have command on the quant section. Nova has asked this question of the improvement about the RC section. So Nova, this is something that I also faced when I was preparing for my GRE. So the RC section questions are really one of the most challenging ones in the verbal one. So you're saying that you're not able to achieve decent scores in the mock test because of the RC. And I have felt the same way. So my number one tip on the RCs would again be try, like practice tons of questions on the RCs. And when you, I'm not sure if you have gone through the videos prepared by Chris Lee from Magoosh. So he's a really awesome guy, and he has a very good command on RCs. So he's got a really good team. And every time you practice, so I would tell you this thing. So try to take questions from the RCs from the premium Magoosh account that we have provided from SSGSA, and then you see how many of them you got right and how many of them you got wrong. And you open the answer video of Chris Lee from Magoosh, and then he will try to explain you why what should be the thought process that should go behind reading the RC and answering the RC question. So if you could watch those videos, you would be able to get a good command of how you really tackle the RC questions. So a good starting approach would be to take the questions of the RCs from the Magoosh itself and watch the videos, the sample answer videos. That would be your best bet. Then we have a question from Ikra. You have a question on voice. What is the question, Ikra? You can type it here, or you can also unmute yourself and ask the question. Hello? Ikra, can you hear me? If you can hear me, you can type the question in the chat box itself, or you can simply unmute your mic and ask the question. Either way is fine. I cannot hear you, Ikra. I see that you are unmuted already. I think you should unmute yourself first. I still cannot hear you. Okay. So, all right. I'm waiting for you to type the question, then we can take it from there. Meanwhile, if anybody else has any question, they can simply type in their question or unmute themselves.